Hi guys, as you may know, for the past 2 years, in 2018 and 2019, I have been the Brontë Society's Young Ambassador, and for a Brontë lover like me, that has been a dream come true. I hosted the Brontë Book Club last year, which I loved every second of, and I know that lots of you loved it too. And today I'm going to try to recreate my own Brontë little book. You may have seen examples or pictures of the Brontes' little books, these tiny weeny books they created when they were young children and wrote stories in. And at the moment, the Brontë Parsonage Museum and the Brontë Society are fundraising because one of Charlotte's little books is up for auction in the middle of November. And so they're working really hard to raise the money to be able to hopefully buy it. It came up for auction a few years ago, but sadly they were outbid at the last minute. And so as a Brontë lover, and I'm sure all of you feel the same, I really don't want that to happen again. It's so important that these little books are kept in the Brontë Society's collection so that they can be enjoyed for years to come by Brontë lovers and scholars, and so it can be used by the people who will love and treasure it the most. The little book in question is one of Charlotte's. It has over 4,000 words contained in it, and it's one in a sequence of 6. 5 of them are known to survive, and the 4 others are in the Brontë Society's collection. So if they are successful at auction this time, then the 5 existing little books will be back together again, which I think is so important. So they're trying to raise £80,000. The auction is on the 18th of November, and I'll leave all the details in the description to where you can donate if you'd like to. There is a crowdfunder page with rewards such as a little book bookmark or a digital thank you, up to much bigger rewards where you can see behind the scenes of the Brontë Society's collection or see the little book for yourself. So all the details will be in the description if you would like to donate. I have donated myself. I've got family members to donate because it's something that's very important to me, and I'd never ask you to do anything like this if I didn't truly 100% believe in it myself. But it's so important that this little book is saved and it doesn't just go to a private collection where it might not be seen for a very long time. So I do feel very passionately about this, so if you are able to donate, please do, but if you're not, then please help to spread the word, because the auction is on the 18th of November, so we don't have a lot of time. But I thought that to illustrate just how amazing the little books are, I would try to make my own with a few modern cheats, but I'm kind of gonna stick to how the Brontes would have made them too, and just see if they are as easy to write in as the Brontes make it seem. You can only view these through magnifying glasses, and even then the writing is impossible to read, so I want to see just how difficult it is. I was going to do this as more of a tutorial, but then I realised that I'm absolutely rubbish at craft of any kind, and I was always made to believe that I was bad at it, so I've just kind of... I mean, I'm not the best, so this could be a disaster or it could be really good. I'm not sure, probably the former rather than the latter, but I'm going to try to make one, and I'm going to try to write in one and see what it is like. So maybe you can make your own too, and it might be better than mine, but you could send me a picture on Instagram or Twitter, because I'd love to see your attempts too. So to make your very own little book, you will need scissors. I have chosen normal scissors, and I've also got some embroidery scissors, but those aren't necessary if you don't have them. I've got a pen, or you could have a quill to be really authentic. I've got a pen in the shape of a quill just to make it quite cool. You'll also need a pencil, a ruler, some paper or scrap paper, because the Brontes would have just used everything and anything that was available to them, so you don't need to go out and buy specific things. You can use what you've got or improvise. I have also used brown paper for the cover, because the Brontes typically used things like the bags that sugar would have come in. They used wallpaper, anything that was available to them. They were very resourceful. And I also have a needle and thread, and that's probably why this is going to go wrong, because I don't think that mine is completely suitable. I think this kind of thing would suit a larger needle and larger thread, but we're gonna go with what we have. I'm going to be resourceful too. And finally, I have some glue. This is craft glue, but you could use Pritt Stick as well. I'd probably use that because when I tried to use this last time, it sprayed all over me because I'm very clumsy. So I'm using this as a slight cheat because I don't really want to sew together the cover and the paper because I think that's going to be a bit too thick. When I've kind of been practicing to make sure that this was everything I needed, it didn't go too well. So this time I'm going to go all the way through, try to do this to the best of my ability, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to start with my pencil, paper and ruler by measuring out 3.5 centimeters. I'm going to go just slightly over so that I don't get the pencil mark when I cut out because I don't want it to be completely neat. So I'm measuring 3.5, just slightly over, and so that is my first measurement. And then I'm going to turn the paper around and measure 6.5 or just over again. This is my first little book. So this is roughly the size. I'm not being completely accurate again. It can be as neat as you want. I'm going to go straight down now. Because I've got this 3.5mm measurement, I'm just going to go over every 6.5 or just slightly over and measure out the same again. The ruler doesn't have to be dead straight because again, that's not the aim. Each page is going to be a slightly different measurement and that's perfectly fine with me. You don't want your book to be too thick because unless you're filling it with all of the words that Charlotte wrote in her book, I feel like for a modern writer, it's preferable to make it smaller. I'm not going to go too enthusiastic on it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the pages that I have drawn. I am not worrying about the lines because I can rub that out or go slightly over them, so that's really not a concern for me. I want them all to be a slightly different size, as I've said. I'm going to cut straight down, and if you wanted to make these again, you can keep the paper you haven't used for next time because I think it can be as messy, as impromptu as possible. Like, I really do think that the Brontes as children weren't worrying exactly how neat. They just wanted them to be realistic because they wanted to write stories for their toy soldiers, and that was the reason that they started in the first place. So Patrick Bronte, their father, brought home some toy soldiers for Branwell one day, and each of the Bronte children had a toy soldier character, and so those first stories with the toy soldiers then turned into Glasstown and Angria, and for Emily and Anne that turned into Gondal. So all of these are slightly different sizes, and I'm going to put them off to the side for 1 minute because the next job to do is taking our brown paper and cutting out the same or just slightly larger for the cover. So I've got a piece of brown paper here and it's very messy. It does not have to be neat again, like none of this has to be neat. So I'm going to measure just over 6.5, probably about 7 or just under 7, and then just under 4 the other way because it has to be slightly bigger because it is the cover. So that's what I'm doing now, just measuring out 7, 4, again does not have to be neat or straight. That is the running theme in this video, I think. So there we go, this is going to be our cover. Join that up. And then I'm going to cut this out. I've always been completely in awe of the little books because they are works of art in themselves. They might seem like they are just words, and the words are amazing, but I think that the skill that goes into them as well will not equal my skill. It's going to be a far greater skill than I will ever demonstrate, but I just love that they created these as children, and they're these tiny things that nobody else could read because they're so small. So if Patrick came across them, he wouldn't have been able to read what they were writing about, and their stories were really dark too, which I love. So I've got my cover, I've got my white paper, and now it's time to assemble. So this is roughly right, and what I'm going to do is sandwich it all together and then fold it in half. Now this is the point where you can kind of neaten it up slightly, so I'm just going to go around and cut here where I just kind of want it to be a little bit neater. And then I'm going to take the cover off because this is not completely necessary. So this is the insert, this is what's going to go inside, and this is when you'll need your needle and thread, because what you're going to do is stitch down the middle where you have folded it. Now this is quite a tricky job for me, so what I'm going to do is take this notebook and lean on here with the needle, because I found this rather tricky to do with the needle and thread I have got. So you might need a thicker needle and thread like I mentioned before, and I'm going to take my embroidery scissors and just cut that there. You're going to want to create quite a big knot at the bottom because the paper, it will have a bigger hole in it when you thread it through. So the bigger knot you can make, you're not going to see it because you're going to stick it afterwards to the back, or I'm going to. You might not decide to do this after you watch this video because you might think, what a complete disaster she's made of that. So I'm just making a knot in the thread because it does need to be sturdy as possible, even though when you glue it down it's not going to make too much of a difference. So I'm going to start by going straight through from the bottom. Again, I mean, the Brontes were really neat with this, but I'm not going to be neat because I feel like it's not fully in my capabilities. So I'm lifting it up, try not to pull it too tight through, and then I'm doing the same. So this is my kind of fool's guide to embroidery method. It doesn't matter about that bit there. So I'm just doing it like this. I'm trying not to put it too tight because I found that that hasn't been the best way, and I'm just kind of following the line. But again, this is the fool's guide to embroidering paper, so it's not going to be neat because I am the fool in question. But I feel like it has the same effect, and you can look at some of Charlotte's little books, and I think maybe one of Branwell's or some, and you can see that this is kind of what they did, or this is my interpretation of what they did, but they would have been much better at this than me. They weren't fools. I'm trying not to be derogatory to myself, but also I'm not that brilliant at craft. There we go. So I'm going straight up to the top with it. Again, really does not have to be neat. In fact, this is not neat in the slightest, and I'm kind of annoyed with myself for how untidy it is, but this is never going to be a work of art, let's be real. So then I'm going to go down. I think you could knot it at the bottom. Actually, I'm just going to snip it anyway because it's going to be glued down, so I think that's going to add a bit more stability. And then I'm just going to cut that as close to there as I can so it doesn't show. So now that's done, we are going to glue this to here, which probably is not period accurate, but I feel like I've worked hard enough for it, so I can take this liberty. So I'm taking the craft glue and I'm actually going to just glue down here. If the glue will come out, please. Please. You can tell that I don't do arts and crafts very often because pretty sure this has been a failure, but an interesting failure. So then I'm gonna glue it all in. But I mean, overall this hasn't been terrible. So then I'm gonna fold it back through. There we are. I've seen a lot worse crafts from myself, but you can tell now just how tiny these are. So to illustrate just how difficult it was to write in these, I'm going to try to write with this quill pen, which is just a pen. I think that this even has slightly too big of a nib because I've tried to write small just to test out if this would be okay, and it didn't go well. So let's try to write something. I'm going to write the quote from Jane Eyre. I am no bird and no net ensnares me, which is not accurate to the little books, but is still a Bronte quote. So I have no clue if what you are watching is in focus, because even if it was, I don't think you could tell, but by sight I can tell that my writing is still way too big, which is interesting. Like, I wonder what I can write now. I'll just write some rubbish. I am trying to make my handwriting very small, but it is very tricky to do and I have no idea how the Brontes did it. Wow, they were Very dedicated and amazing. I actually just wrote bigger, and the more pressure you put down, I feel like the words need to be slightly jumbled together, but also they can't be. Like, there's too much blank space on this that I'm not happy with, because I know that it must have just been one of those things that they did so often that they knew how to do it, whereas by my modern untrained eye, it's so difficult to do. I mean, I'm quite impressed with this. This is as good as it will get. But they used to draw pictures and all sorts, which I'm not going to do because I cannot draw to save my life. But I'm kind of impressed with this. Not sure if it's something I'd do again in a hurry, and I'm not sure what my publisher would think if I handed in a book this size. Could be an option. And if anything, this has made me love the Brontes even more, because you can tell just how difficult this was, but they did so much of it and were so amazing at it. And the little books really are art in themselves, not just the words, even though the words are so important inside. This is the true art in writing this tiny, in crafting stories in such a miniature way. That to me is just phenomenal, and I love that so much. So please, if you are able, check out the crowdfunder and donation links in the description, because it'd be so lovely if you could support this amazing cause to bring Charlotte's very own little book back to Haworth and the Bronte parsonage. I don't think this will ever be in any kind of museum. In fact, it'll probably go straight in the bin. But it was very amusing to do, and I would highly recommend trying to create your own little book so that you too can find out what it's like to write as tiny as the Brontes did, because you do gain a far greater appreciation for it after it. Also, you may be able to see in the background that these are my new bookcases. There will be a bookshelf reorganisation or just organisation vlog coming up soon, as well as a full bookshelf tour, which I'm really excited about. They are nearly finished, so I can't wait to share all of that with you, but it might not be for a week or two yet, but I can't wait. I love them so much. They are amazing. You'll see all of that soon, and please, if you can, donate, or if not, please spread the word as far and wide as you can, wherever you live, whatever country, please, because it is so important. So even if you can't donate, try to spread the word, and I'll be talking about it lots and lots, and hopefully the auction will be successful and Charlotte's little book will be back in Haworth very soon. So I'm keeping everything crossed, and again, I wouldn't have asked this of you if I hadn't donated or hadn't supported it myself, and this isn't sponsored in any way. I just really wanted to share this with you and also make my own little book. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys soon. Happy reading!